In a previous Ed Family video, I talked about how I had an opportunity to take a field trip to the Chinese American Museum in Los Angeles. We pretty much took Amtrak to Union Station, got off at Alvera Street and had a chance to see Alvera Street, visited the Chinese American Museum, which I showcased in a previous Ed Family video. Uh, had a chance to walk around Little Tokyo, and I highly recommend this location for its like sweets, baked goods, ice cream. I even had like lunch there, squid udon, super good. And then of course the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles. Now, right in the front of the museum, you'll see the Go for Broke monument, and on that it has the names of the 16,126 Nisei soldiers who volunteered for the All Nisei 442nd Regimental Combat Team. Nisei basically means second generation, so these are Japanese Americans who were born in the United States, fighting on behalf of the United States. And their unit motto was "Go for Broke." So at that time, Japanese and Japanese Americans were viewed with suspicion, but so many came to fight for the United States, though deprived of their constitutional rights, to prove their loyalty to a nation that had incarcerated Japanese Americans. On there is an inscription from President Harry S. Truman, which I thought was really powerful. You not only fought the enemy, you fought prejudice and won. Once again, the Go for Broke monument has an inscription on it, and it says this: rising to the defense of their country by the thousands they came, these young Japanese American soldiers from Hawaii, the states, America's concentration camps, to fight in Europe and the Pacific during World War II, looked upon with suspicion, set apart and deprived of their constitutional rights, they nevertheless remained steadfast and served with indomitable spirit and uncommon valor, for theirs was a fight to prove loyalty. The legacy will serve as a sobering reminder that never again shall any group be denied liberty and the rights of citizenship. Ben H. Tamashiro. Basically, this day they were also having a really amazing special exhibit on the sutra, the Buddhist Lotus Sutra teachings, as well as the Bible, which was kind of documenting the Japanese American spiritual journey as well. And so this is actually a picture of a translated Bible commentary. Also showcased, a special showcase that was happening was a film that was playing, which I would recommend definitely seeing, of the incarceration of Japanese Americans, but a white pastor who was a minister to the Japanese American community, basically when the people were about to be incarcerated and they had to relieve themselves of so many of their items, storage, livelihood. He used portions of the gym of his church to serve as a storage area for the Japanese Americans, so that later when they came out of the concentration camp years later, they could retrieve these important items. Otherwise, they would have lost those for good. And he continued to minister to the congregation, actually traveling with them to the location of these incarceration sites and continuing to be their minister. And I just can't imagine at the time how unpopular he must have been in this country as he continued to serve this community, this Japanese American community that he loved so much and had great compassion for. So I was just touched by his compassion and courage, and so glad that I had a chance to see that film, and I recommend it to you. Also, you'll see once again the primary source, the Executive Order 9066, where Japanese ancestry are ordered to report. And actually this museum, this Japanese American National Museum, is actually one of the sites where Japanese Americans were brought to before they were then transported to incarceration camps all across our country. So it's hard to believe that. In fact, some of the members that I had gone with, their very parents were there and that was the location that they were brought to before that they were sent to incarceration camps. And once again, I think this is because partially because there's this of some of the racism that had been in existence in the United States. I'm just going to go ahead and read this as I saw it, because I think it's important to understand this idea of aliens ineligible for citizenship. The Chinese were the first large group of Asian American immigrants to enter the United States beginning in the 1840s. The Chinese contributed greatly to the agricultural and industrial development of the West, even as Americans shunned them for their copper skin. By 1882, anti-Chinese sentiment climaxed in the Chinese Exclusion Act. No more Chinese laborers were allowed into the United States. To fill the sudden void for cheap labor, bosses began to recruit Japanese workers. But unlike European immigrants, Asians could not become naturalized citizens. Their status as aliens ineligible for citizenship confirmed that they were unwelcome in the United States. And this is a picture of the luggage. Can you imagine only being able to take just a few of your goods, of all your belongings, to these incarceration camps? And then when they arrived there, some had barracks ready to go, and others, it was actually the Japanese Americans who helped to build them with the materials that were provided. I think this reconstruction here is actually using the planks that were a part of the original barracks. So 6 families would fit into one, and then the picture that you see here is a picture of one family who would have a portion of the barracks. And of course, not very well prepped at all for the elements in these incarceration zones. Here's a picture. Should the United States apologize? And I'll conclude with that. Definitely a worthwhile place to visit. Just taking the Amtrak out, Olvera Street, Chinese American Museum, and also the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles.